And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our presenters for today. Sue Chapman has served students and other math learners for more than 40 years in the roles of teacher, mathematics coach, campus administrator, district curriculum coordinator, and teacher educator. She currently teaches mathematics methods courses to pre-service teachers at the University of Houston Clear Lake and provides virtual professional learning and coaching support to teachers and leaders across the country. Sue is the co-author, along with our other presenter, Holly, of 2 Corwin books, Power Up Your Math Community and 8 Habits of Highly Effective Math Students. Holly Burwell is a teacher, math specialist, learning facilitator, and instructional coach with students and educators in grades pre-K through 12. Her consulting business, which is known as Inspired Mathematics, supports math educators across the country, and she regularly presents professional learning sessions at conferences, including NCTM, NCSM, and the Model Schools Conferences. Holly worked as a math specialist in Great Falls Public Schools to lead and growth math achievement for 10,000 plus students. Holly is committed to bringing joy to teaching and learning mathematics in schools. And with that, I will hand it over to Sue and Holly.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled that you are here learning with us. My name is Holly Burwell. I live in Montana. After our introductions, I will be dropping a link to the handout in the chat. So, of course, you may choose to take a moment to open it and look, but I would definitely suggest waiting to open anything else until we get there. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my co-author.
Thanks, Holly. Everyone, we are so thrilled to be here with you. We have such respect for the work that you do every day in service of children. And we're just honored to have this chance to share some ideas to support you in that important work. So let's dive in and let's start with some mathematics. What you see on the screen is a picture of some love locks. A love lock is a padlock that a couple might lock to a bridge or gate to symbolize their love. Typically, it's inscribed with the sweetheart's names or initials and maybe a date. And the key is often thrown into a nearby body of water to symbolize that unbreakable bond of love. So as you look at this photo, what are you noticing about these love locks? Share some ideas in chat, please. It's jumping out at you. Different sizes, shapes, colors, patterns, colors. Nice.
Someone noticed a pattern.
Yep, for sure.
Patterns are coming up again and again.
Yep, shapes. We're putting some labels on those patterns. Different orientations. We haven't talked about the number of the different types of locks, but that might be another way we could analyze them. Isn't it interesting how we naturally use mathematics to make sense of our world? Number, shape, orientation, pattern, these are all mathematical ideas we use as tools for understanding and navigating our lives. All human beings are naturally mathematical, even when we're not consciously aware of it. Holly and I are going to show you how to use the 8 habits of highly effective math students as keys to unlock each of your students' natural mathematical abilities and to grow your own mathematical strengths. We'll come back to your experience using mathematics to think about these locks in a little bit. But first, here are some questions that we're going to explore together in our brief time. As you read through these questions, think about how they relate to your personal goals for students and possibly for teachers that you support. We've set aside a bit of time at the end of our session for questions, and as Debbie said, as questions come up, feel free to jot them in chat, and Debbie will make note of them for us for the end of the session. So I'm going to invite you for a second to fast forward to the last day of the school year. Imagine your students walking out of your classroom on the very last day of school. What is it that you would hope they would say about your mathematics class? What do you hope they have learned about mathematics? And again, we'll invite you to share your thoughts in chat. They had
Oh,
fun
fun
with mathematics.
and
Yeah.
engaging. That's funny. I mean, it's interesting that fun is the first thing that comes to light, right? We want to have fun. Interesting. Oh, I did it. I love that. I love that. I did it. That's a good one. They had fun, hard work. I'm a mathematician and math is part of my world. That was great.
It was easy, it was accessible. Notice the theme in all of these. And I think this goes so nicely with this beautiful quote from this brilliant book, Street Data, by Safir and Dugan. Student agency is the goal of our work in education. It's not scores. Student agency is what sets our students up for success in their future learning and in life. It's the reason we became teachers. There's a lot of talk these days about the importance of developing our students' mathematical identities and agency. But as a profession, I don't think we've done a particularly good job of helping teachers understand these important ideas or how to develop these aspects of learning in our students. A person's math identity is the sum of their beliefs about their ability to understand math and the role that math plays in their lives. And math agency is a person's ability to play an active role in their learning of mathematics and using mathematics in real life. When a student or an adult has strong math learning habits, they have strong math agency. And when they have strong math agency, they see themselves as math capable and they take on the identity of a math person or a mathematician. It makes sense, therefore, that we should explicitly teach the math habits and strategically support their growth, just as we do math concepts and skills. Just as you said in your comments in chat. So, I want to focus for just a second on this idea of a habit. Again, this is something we haven't given a lot of attention to in education. Habit development, but habits are important to learning, just as they are to every aspect of our lives. A habit is a pattern of behavior that shapes our daily lives. Habits allow us to deal with aspects of our lives on autopilot so that we're at our cognitive and emotional best to tackle challenges that come up, including new learning. Students who are successful in school have strong learning habits. And students who are not yet successful in school have underdeveloped learning habits, but they have the potential to grow strong learning habits so that they can be successful. In fact, habit development is a necessary and missing piece in many of our intervention efforts. On your webinar handout, just above the image of the two books, you'll find 3 links to a 3-part web blog series on using the habits to support intervention. So Holly's going to tell you a little bit more about the 8 habits of highly effective math students.
Thank you, Sue. And I just went ahead and dropped that link again for those of you who need access to that handout. But I'd like to start with having you take a moment to look at the image of the 8 habits of highly successful math students. And I'd like you to share in the chat something that you notice.
Bring a link into chat again.
Okay, I dropped that again. Let me know if you don't see that. Rebecca says that all of them start with I. I think that's something important to consider, that we're not only talking about our math students, we also are talking about that we are learners as well of mathematics. They're written as positive affirmations. What you should see is I am dropping a link. It's a Google document. Thank you so much. The host has dropped that in there for you. Yeah, each person has a role in math learning. Thank you, Lori. Perfect. Thank you. It looks like it went through.
Julie says active versus passive learning.
Absolutely. And that they talk about math, it's relevant to their lives. There's a growth mindset. And you're likely, as you continue to drop those ideas in chat, you'll notice that there's color coding in the list of the habits, as well as the icons in the visual you see there. The color coding represents categories within the 8 habits. We're going to talk about each of these habits briefly within the 4 categories. And there's some great ideas coming into chat there. Let's start with our first 3, our first set of habits in the first category. And the dark blue habits function as mindsets essential to math learning. So these include making sense of math, engaging in challenging problems, and learning from our math mistakes. When students believe that math should make sense, they're more willing to engage in challenging problems. And really, these are the problems they will likely face in the world, is the more challenging, where they don't have all of the information. And when they know that math should make sense and they engage in challenging problems, they understand that they will also make mistakes and that these are so helpful for their learning, and they should take the opportunity to learn from them. In our second grouping, this is our orange habits, and these habits support thinking and communication. When students represent math in a variety of ways, they're supporting their sense making. They're making sense through their representations, and it helps them to support the communication of their ideas to others. Of course, math talk, we believe, includes verbal and nonverbal communication, as well as writing and mathematics as well. So these are our mental tools. So along with these orange habits that are mental tools, we also have what are our next category, our teal habits. And these habits really support math understanding and problem solving. We know that students look for and use patterns, and as they're looking and finding those patterns, they're making connections to not only themselves, but to the world and to other math concepts. And I noted that many of you put in the chat, you talked about how students, we want them to connect math to themselves and their lives, that it's relevant. And, really math is defined as the study of patterns. So therefore, when we help our students see that looking for patterns and making connections with that will really help support them in a deep understanding of mathematics. And for our last category of the math habits, the red habit, single habit, is really a synthesis of the other 7 habits. When students see themselves as mathematicians, they have a positive math identity and they have agency over their math learning. This habit helps our students be competent and confident, not only in our math classrooms, but using math to understand and navigate their future and the world. And so our goal ultimately is that our students see themselves as a mathematician, and we're working on this continuously. And it really takes the support of those other 7 habits to have this come to life. So in just a moment, we're going to bring up an image for you, and we're going to go through a math talk. And I'd like you to engage in any way through the chat that you see. So we're going to go ahead and move the slide. Oh, yeah, Terry, this is great. She can't overemphasize the importance of our personal narrative, who we are as mathematicians. And I think, Terry, you say that wonderfully. And we also believe that as adults ourselves, right? Like as learners and teachers ourselves, we are also continuing to build our own math narrative. So thank you for that. On the screen, you notice some keys here. I'd like for you to think about how many you see. But more importantly, I'd love for you to share, how do you see them? So when you drop your number into chat, if you would share with us an explanation for how you saw them.
Oh,
Oh,
round and not
fascinating.
round.
I did not even notice that.
I didn't either.
How cool. Two groups of 4 and one 3. Oh, I wanna circle your 4 so I can see where they are. That's very cool. Oh, someone else said 4, 4, and 3 as well.
Going clockwise, sorting them by
Very cool.
shape.
And 4 on the left, 4 on the right, and 3 in the middle. Very cool. Oh, that's okay. Remember, we can miscount. That's the fun in all of this. We get to
Absolutely.
try again. That's the most fun about learning and doing math. That um, makes it so interesting. Oh, very cool. There are some really incredible ways that you are seeing these. And while we might look at this and think, yeah, this is a great primary example of, how students are counting something, or we're counting and seeing and grouping something. But I think too, with our older students as well, they are also thinking about these math habits, which we're going to go into here in just a moment. And through our math experiences that they're having at their grade and age, they're also experiencing these. So I'd like you to again review these 8 math habits and take a moment to think about which one do you feel like that you used as you were finding out how many keys, and then as you thought about how you saw them grouped together.
Yeah, I'm seeing patterns,
Mm-hmm.
representation.
Very cool. And as these are coming in, it's so important to note, as you'll uncover in your work with the habits, is that, they're sort of intertwined, right? You see them working together as well as spending time working on them independently. And with any one math experience, we might see, 3 or 4 habits. We might see evidence of all of them. But the goal is that we're really bringing them to light for our students. I see a lot of 3, 5, and 7. Very cool. And we didn't have an opportunity, but it also would have been fun, even in our communication through the chat. I think we used a little bit of 4. Would you say so, Sue?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
To the extent that we're limited by the fact that we're not in the same room.
yeah,
There
yeah.
certainly has been a lot of information sharing and thinking about others' ideas.
Absolutely. And what we really want to share with you is that each of these habits can be taught. All students are capable of learning and strengthening their math
Yeah.
habits. And as students' math habits become stronger, they become more self directed and confident as math learners. The habits, therefore, allow students to really see themselves as math capable, and they have agency in their own math learning. We really see the habits as essential keys to building students' mathematical proficiency, identities, and agency.
Yeah. And it strikes me, Holly, as you're talking, that uh, we have such substantive research that everybody is math capable given the right learning experiences and opportunities to um, make sense of math in personal ways. It strikes me that these 8 math habits are really ways of bringing that vision of every child, every adult is math capable to life. When we help students develop these, we help them and everybody else see their mathematical brilliance, their natural mathematical brilliance.
I love that. And that just takes us into our work, and our goal is really to help teachers see if we do really believe that all students are capable, then our question always is, how do we help our students utilize these habits and learn these habits? And how do we put this into what we're teaching with math so that they do feel mathematically capable and confident? So we're going to talk about how we can incorporate habit development into our math instruction. And there's a lot of ways to integrate the practice with the math habits into your math time. We don't have the time to go through all of them today, but the beautiful thing is you can read about many of them in our books. We are going to share 3 ideas to kind of get you started. Again, in your webinar handout, you will find links to the tools that we'll show you for each of the math habits to get you started. And let me restate that. You'll find 2 within the handout. And then if you would like the other habits, the other 6, so you have all 8, we've linked a Google form in that handout for you. So let's start by talking about the first part. If we're going to integrate these habits into the classroom, it's so important that we start by noticing how our students are currently using the habits so that we can build our awareness of not only, what our students are doing well, but how we might, or which habits we might strengthen. So what you see on the screen here, we've taken the habit, I expect math to make sense. And we've thought about, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like for a student who is at this place, right? They expect math to make sense and they're really living that. So you'll notice things like they're probably continue working and they're persevering. If something doesn't make sense, they stop to ask why it doesn't make sense. They don't just, stop working and not expect it to make sense. And yes, making sense does feel a little confusing and frustrating, but eventually there's this excitement when you've overcome that. So I want to share, there's a couple ways you might use a tool like this. For example, in classrooms that I work in and when I work with students, I often like to start by having a mathematical experience in the classroom. So I might do like a 5-minute warm up, and I'm going to give the students a low floor, high ceiling, accessible problem. And all I mean by that is that there are multiple approaches or solutions, because by setting up that experience, I can now observe my students to see, are they utilizing any of these looks like, sounds like, feels like for the habit of making sense? So I usually just print off a class list and I just make a quick tally anytime I make observation of a student maybe using some of these exemplary pieces of the habit. And early on, I have classrooms where I don't see students using any of these. And that just tells me I have such an opportunity to go ahead and continue working and building on that. How can I help my students understand that making sense is important? So once I have that information, I can now think, okay, I know how my students are using these habits, and I'm going to go ahead and decide that, I need to teach making sense. So in the next slide, I'm going to be thinking about another way that I can incorporate is that I need to explicitly teach the habits. We talked about that each of these habits can be taught and practiced. One way that we often do that is to structure an anchor lesson so that students have an opportunity to practice the habit and get feedback so that they can quickly learn the value of these habits. So for something like this, you'll notice that this is a general anchor lesson. And in the handout, you'll see more specific examples as well. In both of the books, you'll see examples of anchor lessons that can help you bring these habits to life. If we stick with making sense, for example, you'll notice for the introduction, I'm going to talk to my students about what it means to make sense in math and why it's important. And then I might even give them something that they can think about. Absolutely, we can. If you could, someone could drop that link back in the chat. So I might say to my students, today we're going to practice making sense. And one of the ways that you can do that is once you've read something or it's been read to you, you can stop and think about what you already know about the problem, and you can share that with a partner. So I'm giving them something a problem then to work on, and let them engage with that habit. I'm giving them something to think about. And as students are working on a problem that can come from your curriculum resources, whatever it is you're teaching with, you're going to observe your students and you're going to notice and write down and name when you see them, for example, stopping to talk to a partner and reading to make sense, because that's the strategy you gave them. Lastly, it's so important, you'll notice for the anchor lesson, we save time at the end to really reflect. And we say to students, let's come back together. Let's talk about the mathematics in the problem. What did you learn? What sort of strategies were you using? But we also need to make note of what we noticed in our students related to that habit that we just talked about. So I might say, hey, I walked over and I noticed that these two students, they were not sure what to do, so they went back and reread, and then they talked about that with each other. That's a way that you can make sense of mathematics when you're unsure. And as you notice, that's a one example of many, but it kind of gives you a picture about what this could look like. And with your students, then you can create a looks like, sounds like anchor chart that students can return to continue to build those habits. And that really takes us into the third part. So we introduce the habit, we make notice of it, we teach it, but then we also want, the most effective way to really grow the math habits is to enlist our students in their own habit development. Because remember, our goal is agency and identity. So our students are self-sufficient learners. So you'll notice here, with the habit, I expect math to make sense, there's a couple different ways that we've listed here that could look like. And maybe for older students, you'll be exploring some of these different strategies and have students thinking about how they're growing in these strategies. You may also pick one of them. For example, you might say, I justify my math thinking, and you might break that down even more and have the students really reflect and write on or talk about how they're growing in that habit. And again, you'll see an example of the habit reflection tool for each of the habits in your handout, so you can get a sense of what that looks like. And I'm going to pass this over to Sue now to kind of move on to that next part here.
Absolutely, Holly. Thank you. We hope these tools will help you to get started incorporating habit development in your math instruction. And so as we wrap up our session, we want to offer you a strategy that you can use tomorrow to create a math positive classroom environment and boost your students' confidence and engagement in mathematics. We're going to call this strategy SHINE. I borrowed this term from habit expert P.J. Fogg, not an educator, but a scientist who really has studied the power of habits in people's lives. He tells us that SHINE involves the power of celebrating small success, and that celebration is the most important skill for growing new habits, because our brains want to feel good. When we as teachers structure learning experiences that let our students feel success, their brains release special neurotransmitters, chemicals that activate positive emotions. And when we teach our students how to celebrate their own small successes and each other's successes, we help them master the 8 math habits. We equip them with a strategy that they can use throughout their lives to continue growing habits that will serve them well. The memory of success creates the expectation that engaging in a math habit will result in similar positive feelings in the future, which increases the likelihood that students will repeat and eventually internalize the math habit. And so when we take time to teach children how to celebrate their successes in growing those math habits, we give them a tool for becoming powerful and successful math learners this school year, but also throughout their lives. Now, these successes are not elaborate. They often take the form of a simple statement made by the student or by the teacher. As we look at these examples, imagine mini celebrations like these in your own classroom. A teacher might say, "You corrected an error, and you also explained why you changed your mind about that answer. You're using mistakes to grow as a mathematician. How exciting for you." Or a teacher might say, "You proved that you found a math pattern with a table and equations. I bet you feel pretty mathematically powerful right now." Here are some examples of student-initiated self-celebrations. As you read through these examples, think about the math habits that you used with the photo of the love locks or the image of the keys. And if you wish, share in chat a statement to celebrate your own use of this math habit.
I think it's such a good practice to celebrate ourselves, right? And to remember, how hard we work and our own thinking. I love this.
Well, and I have to remind myself that our children learn how to be mathematicians by watching us. And so
Yes.
when we publicly celebrate our own math habits, we're serving as a model to them of what they can do in their own habit growth.
Very cool.
Ah, thanks, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yes, you did, Melissa. Hooray for you.
We might need a little fun sound that plays on our phone when a kid celebrates the.
I think that's an awesome idea. All right. So thank you, Karina. Oh, yeah. Some people are reporting difficulty. Um, let me double check on those links. We'll get it fixed if there's an issue. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. Love it. Celebrating the mistake of the day. You found a great and unique way to count the keys. Wonderful. Okay. We can lift our students up as learners by teaching them why learning celebrations are important and how to celebrate their learning success in simple but meaningful ways. Remember that the purpose of a learning celebration is to create positive feelings in the brain that are going to reinforce a specific learning behavior, make it more likely that it'll happen again in the future. And because our personalities and experiences are different, our celebrations are also going to be unique. So what might feel like a celebration to me may not feel like a celebration to Holly or to the students that we work with. You want to encourage your students to experiment with and find celebrations that work well for them. So I found it helpful to share these categories of celebrations as a way of encouraging students to personalize their celebrations and find ones that are good matches for them. A student can know that a celebration is a good match for them personally if it generates feelings of pride, exhilaration, or joy. So, as we've said, your own math habits are so important. You want to let them shine for students to see. You want to celebrate them right along with your students. And so we encourage you to celebrate your math habits by reflecting on and sharing how math helps you to make sense of the world and enriches your life. Notice how mathematics helps you tackle and solve challenging real life problems. And go public with your mathematical mistakes. Um, tell students how they helped you learn. When students engage in the 8 math habits, they experience a wealth of positive emotions, which in turn build their relationship with math and strengthen their math identities and agency. Imagine for a second what might be the long-term consequences of students consciously and intentionally using the math habits and experiencing these positive emotions. We'll pause for a second here to give you a chance to share what the consequences might be for the students that you have the opportunity to work with this year. How might a focus on the math habits support them? You'll share in chat, please. Thanks, Melissa. That academic risk-taking, recognizing that mistakes are a natural part of learning, confidence, a relationship with math, being more flexible in their thinking and more willing to represent math in various ways. All of these examples are so empowering to students. Comfort making mistakes, rewriting that narrative. Thank you, everyone. So we hope you've enjoyed this webinar and that you're taking some tools and ideas for growing your students' math identities and agency. We hope these tools and ideas support you in helping every one of your students to flourish as a math learner and to have a lifelong relationship with mathematics as a result of the experiences they're going to have in your classroom this year. We want to thank you for coming. And we'll we'll pause here.
Yeah, we'd like to bookend our session with some time for questions and answers. And of course, we've provided a couple prompts to get you thinking not only for now, but for after our session today as well.
Yeah, Debbie, were there questions in chat that people are wondering about?
What are some best practices to present this to students over time? Terry, that's such a great question. I think that one of the things that I often talk to teachers about is to really narrow your focus. It can be overwhelming to think about all 8 habits together. So, maybe starting small with a single habit and just making students aware of what that habit is, right? Through explicitly teaching what that habit is and creating an anchor lesson, but also coming back to reflect on those habits as well. And then some teachers like to just give a general overview, for example, depending on your grade, of all 8 habits so that students are aware of them. And then you just talk about, fluidly, when am I going to get in and which ones did we use today and how did we use them? So there's a variety of ways. What else would you suggest, Sue?
Yeah, in our first book, Power Up Your Math Community, we talk about a year-long plan for introducing the habits with a consciousness that's going to look different in every classroom and every school. But I think Holly's idea of starting with a single habit, noticing what happens to your students' learning and confidence as they see that habit grow in themselves, and then gradually introducing other habits to the point where they have a toolkit that they can draw on.
Yeah. And Terry added, I think this is a beautiful thing as we think about our young students. Absolutely. Could we have them draw pictures to represent the habits? I have some teachers who've printed out the little icons, which we can always share with you, and teach them how to, point to the icons or grab an icon and, glue it into a notebook and show how they did that and share. So these habits happen in kindergarten all the time. They happen all the way up through grade 12. They happen with adults too. Sue and I are constantly reflecting on our use of the habits as we grow and refine them, and we will probably continue to do so. So, Terry, that's a wonderful suggestion. Having students kind of keep a little notebook, maybe drawings about how they're growing in that.
Such power in representing things visually. Both in mathematics as well as just holding on to key ideas. Love that suggestion.
Rebecca wondered if she really liked that graphic with the 8 habits and the feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you, Sue, if we want to go back to that or if we have a way to share that, but
Sure.
Yeah.
The slide with the feelings.
Yeah, slide 28.
Okay.
And sharing these ideas with other teachers, another great question. As mentioned before, Power Up Your Math Community, we've included in each month opportunity for professional learning community time. So we have a hour-long professional learning experience that you can do with your staff to kind of uncover and make sense of each of those habits together with your team. And it's so powerful. I know some of the greatest growth we've seen in classrooms and schools where people are really using these habits is when we work as a community, right? Because you have other people to get into that and support you. And I think Sarah makes a good point. It can be hard to get buy-in from other people about why does this matter? And I always like to start, right? Like, we didn't always have the same experiences as students ourselves that we're now hoping for our own students. And so sometimes it's just a matter of reinvigorating, finding joy in doing math. One of the things I do is I like to find fun, interesting, unique problems that don't look inherently mathematical. And I like to talk about them or share some fun math memes and then share my experiences with the students that I had with students with my colleagues so that they get to see how those students interacted. I was wondering what other good ideas. Yeah, book studies. That's a great, actually, we have a lot of book studies going on in quite a few schools right now. And there's a couple ways to approach that, reading. Some people are actually only reading a small section of Power Up, a little chunk from each month at a time. Some people are spreading it out and reading a couple of the habits throughout the whole year. And then year 2, they'll do a couple more of the habits. So great opportunity to engage in that. And of course, we'll be sharing our emails. We would love to connect you with some other people. If it's not in your school and you don't have that team now, we can connect you with a community that is using these resources and help you support you in finding ways to bring this to your team.
Yeah, Holly and I have both spent this last part of our careers supporting teachers and schools in strengthening their math programs. And so this question of teacher buy-in is one that we have very much lived and worked with. I think the biggest barrier to not making more progress towards the math reform that we know is effective is that teachers learned mathematics in such a different way than they're being expected to teach. And so it makes sense that there would be some resistance or reluctance or lack of understanding. I think there's a lot of overlap between the math habits and the mathematical processes. And for my undergraduates, my pre-service teachers, the math habits are a way of making those mathematical practices or processes understandable. Holly's also had a lot of success working with large school district in her home state and helping them to collaborate around some professional learning. Holly, do you mind sharing a little bit about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of you hit the nail on the head that we're finding it hard to engage, and there's a lot of negative media
Mm-hmm.
around math and math learning because a lot of us had really negative experiences. So we really started with just getting that engagement, finding the stuff. There's a lot of free, wonderful resources out there for teachers to really re-engage and think about math differently. And then more so, we focused on these habits, right? So when we give permission to our teachers and our students that it's okay in math class to just take some time talking about different connections we're making, or it's okay to look at patterns for multiple days until something emerges because we're teaching our students to sit in that. And so we really worked on selecting a habit at each campus site and really building that through daily math games, daily literature, lots of different ways. And we were very fortunate. We had 4 years of decline into growth that went from like about 1.5 to 2 years growth for on average for across 21 schools. And most of the teachers attributed that to just reinvigorating their joy for math, but also focusing on helping our students be successful independently, right? Building their agency so that they know what to do when they don't know what to do.
Fabulous.
Terry Ann, you asked a great question, and please know we'd love to support you. We've got lots of great resources and ideas that I'd be happy to. So I'd love for you to use our emails. We'll be sharing those here in a minute, and we do this all the time. Don't be shy. We want to be able to connect with you and help you grow so you feel confident yourself in your learning this year.
So as we wrap up, just invite you to reflect on your big takeaways from our session. And if you would, love to have you share that in chat. We'll wait just a minute to give people a chance to share with others the things that they're taking away as being ones they plan to implement immediately or know will make a difference to their students. And as you're sharing those takeaways, we want to share with you both our thanks again for your time today, your commitment to students, your important work as an educator, but also our contact information. And we would love to stay in touch.
And to continue your learning and fun as you build, mathematically competent and confident learners, there's a couple ways you can do so. We've mentioned both of our books that we have at Corwin. Power Up Your Math Community is that month-by-month guide, which will help you to introduce, teach, nurture, and monitor the habits. You'll also find those school-wide ideas for professional learning, math games, literature, anchor lessons, family newsletters, all of that included. The 8 Habits of Highly Effective Math Students will guide you through understanding, teaching, and bringing the 8 habits to life in your classroom. And there really are relevant teacher actions to grow and develop those habits in a variety of ready-to-use, easy-to-use ways, because we understand how busy teachers are but how important this work is. You see our contact information listed on the screen. And as Sue said, we are just so grateful that you joined us today in this session. And there's some great ideas coming into chat.
And there sure are. Thank you, everyone. We'll turn things over to Debbie again. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today.
Thank you again, Sue and Holly, and thanks to everyone who's joined us and participated today. Hope you all have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.